So in this video, we're going to look at how to set up a development server for playing around with IMathAS using WAMP server. This is a convenient tool on Windows machine. For Macs, there are other options out there. This is more complicated than using Docker, which I'm going to show how to do in a different video. But this is a good option if your computer doesn't support Docker, or if you just want to do something more hands-on, let's say. So this page is not the main repository for WAMP, but I find it to be a really handy one because it's got more convenient links. So you're going to need the WAMP server main installer, the full version installer. My computer is 64-bit, so I downloaded that one, but the 32-bit one will run as well. So you can do that one. And then the other important thing is you're going to need the Visual C redistributable packages. And the easiest thing to do is to download the all packages zip file down here at the bottom. Now, if you're running on a 64-bit machine, you're going to need the second one that includes both the 32 and 64-bit because you have to install both of them. Okay, so I've downloaded all those already. And then you'll uncompress that redistributables file, and then you'll need to install all of these. You can actually skip the 2008 ones, but everything from 2010 to 2019, you're going to have to run each of these individually and install them, which I already did. And then you can actually install the WAMP server. So now we're going to go through that process, because this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. So we're going to wait for that to get going here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're going to select our language, accept the agreement. This is telling us, hey, you need to make sure you've installed all those Visual C redistributable packages, which we did. And now it's going to ask, where do you want this? And I'm going to go ahead and install it in the default WAMP64 directory. Off the main root. And now it's going to say, okay, what do you want? And let's see, if we pick the default installation, it's going to install PHP 3 and PHP 4, which is fine. We don't really need PHP 2. We actually don't want the MariaDB. It's going to install it anyway, but it's not what we want. We actually want MySQL 5.7. We don't yet support 8, so we want to install the MySQL 5.7. Doesn't look like there's any way to uninstall the Maria, but oh well. And we want to go ahead and install all the rest of this stuff too. Okay, so make sure that you enable MySQL 5.7. Okay. Yep. And install. And now this will probably take a minute. Okay, and the basic install is done. It asking what browser we want to have associated with it. I personally am going to go in and choose Google Chrome because I don't like Internet Explorer. Let's just go ahead and stick with Notepad for now. That's fine. And now it's going to finish the installation. Okay, and now it's saying, okay, good. And now if we check in our system tray here, there should, oh, it doesn't even look like it's started yet. Okay, so let's go to our, there it is. So let's go ahead and run it. And you'll notice down in the system tray, there's a little red W, and it's now turned green. And if I click on that, we'll see that we are running Apache, which is the web server. We're running MySQL, which is the database, and we're running PHP version 7.3, which is great. Let's just double check to make sure it's kind of working. So let's go to the web browser and just type in localhost, and you should get something that pops up that says, hey, here's WAMP server. While we're at it, let's go into we need to initialize our database. So we need to create a database to install IMathAS into. So for that, we're going to click on this PHP MyAdmin link here. By the way, you can also get there from your little WAMP server thingy here. There's a link there to PHP MyAdmin. And we're going to switch it to MySQL because that's the one we're using. And we're just going to type in root here for the username, no password. And that should get us in with any luck. Yeah, yes, it does. Good. So this is sort of a database administration tool, which is very handy for like checking to make sure data was created correctly in the database. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a database. And so let's call it IMathAS. And we're going to set the character set to UTF. Let's just go with UTF-8 General CI. I think that there's a better one nowadays, but this one will work fine. So let's just go with it. And let's go ahead and create that database. So we don't actually need anything else there. We just need the database. But we will need a database user. So to do that, let's click over to the Privileges tab here. And you'll see that the root user already has privileges, but let's add a new user account. And we'll create a username like IMathAS with a password of, luckily it doesn't really matter if we have a strong password or not because it's all local. I just typed IMathAS again as the password. And then we're going to grant it all privileges on the database IMathAS. So this person, this user can do anything on the IMathAS database. And let's click go. Do not save that. Okay, and there we go. Now we need to tell WAMP where to find our software. And so for that, we're going to go to Apache here. And we are going to create an alias. So we're going to Apache alias directories, and we are going to add an alias. If I can get there. Add an alias. There we are. Okay, so it's going to say enter an alias you want to use. I'm just going to go with IMathAS, just because that's what I'm used to using. And then where do you want it to point? And in my case, I have the software installed, the IMathAS checked out from GitHub on C:\IMathAS. So I'm going to put in here C:\IMathAS with another, oops. Actually, it looks like I'm supposed to use a / here. IMathAS with another / at the end. Hit enter, created. Now it's going to sort of restart the web server. We'll wait for that to turn green. And now with any luck, if I go to localhost /IMathAS, it will bring us to our install. Hooray. So now we can go through the install process. So our database server is localhost. The database name that we just created, you'll remember we created this database called IMathAS. We also created a user called IMathAS and a password of IMathAS. Not very exciting, I know. So we're going to put all that information in. And then if you want to customize any of this stuff, you can go ahead and do that. But the defaults should be fine. And let's go ahead and create our config and set up the database. Now we're going to need to create the database tables. And for some reason it could not connect to the database. So we're going to have to try that again. Hold on. Okay, so I finally figured out what was going wrong there. It's because the new version of WAMP, I've never used this version before, it installs MariaDB. The MariaDB is sort of the default database, and so MySQL, you'll notice, has been installed on port 3308, which is not the usual port that MySQL is installed on. Usually it's installed on 3306. So we have an option. We either can use MariaDB, which might have some incompatibilities, which would not be good, or we're going to have to figure out how to use a different port. And so that's what we're going to do. And that's going to require editing our config.php file. And I don't know why my file name extensions aren't showing here, but this is a .php file. And if I open this up, you'll notice like one of the first lines is this DB server equals localhost. That's the value that we put in earlier. So we're just going to modify that. We're going to add in semicolon port equals 3308. So now it's going to be localhost semicolon port equals 3308. We're going to save that file. And now if we go back to the web browser and refresh the setup DB page, which should be the page that you were on, now we're going to see the right page. We're not going to see that error message. So now we have to set up our initial user. So this is sort of the initial person that can log into this IMathAS. You can go ahead and put in a username and password of your own liking if you want, or you can do like me and just leave it as root for now. So we'll set up the database, and now this is going to just take a second while it creates a bunch of tables in the database. And we should see a big page of text here in a second. We'll just skim through that. And down at the bottom now, it says, go to the login page. So we'll click that. And now we have ourselves a login page. And at this point, you can log in using that user that you just created. And here we are logged in, we're in the system. And now you can do things like go to the admin page and create yourself another user account, or do whatever the heck else you want. The nice thing about this is it is pulling off of the code here in the IMathAS directory. And so this, if you make any changes here, if you check out a new branch and you work on a new feature, any changes you make in your code will be reflected in what you see on your local host here. One thing to be aware of is that you should not check in to your repository the config file or any of the other customization files. So the config, there's an info header file and a login page file. Those should not get checked into the repository. Those are for your local system only. So do not include those in your GitHub repo, because you don't want passwords and credentials being out there in GitHub. And there we go. Now we have a development environment set up, and we can start working on developing new features.